Welcome to my channel. My name is Sarah. If you're new here, if you're not, welcome back. So this week I am trying something a little different with my speed build here. Anytime I build a house in The Sims, I always create Sims to live there after the fact and to be in the ending shots for the end of the speed builds. And I always come up with crazy backstories for these Sims, but I never play with them after the fact. So today I figured I would try something a little different and give you guys the full backstory of the Sims that actually live in this house that I'm about to show you how I built. And I think that there's at least one other person out there who would find this as entertaining as I did. So without further ado, please sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy the story. Everyone meet Mauve Bishop and Ellie Davenport, the lovely Sims that I created to live in this wonderful home. Mauve and Ellie both come from very affluent families within the stoneworking and the lumber milling professions. Mauve's great-grandfather, Elliot Lance, became the first stone processing company owner in Strangerville, where he met Mauve's great-grandmother, Nancy Drake, shortly after his business took off. They married very quickly and had 5 children. Rumors swirled around the small town as to why the marriage was so swift, but the truth was that Elliot and Nancy were just plain in love. No shady business, no juicy gossip. They were just 2 young people who fell hard and fast. Mauve's family was very close, sharing holidays and birthdays together regularly, and Nancy was the glue of the family. She was no nonsense and hardworking in her own career beside her husband and his family business. Mauve's parents tragically passed 13 years ago when the pool ladder mysteriously disappeared and they were trapped in the pool for days. She has taken care of her siblings along with the help of her relatives ever since their passing. Unfortunately, tragedy began to follow the Lance family line, and 5 years after the death of her parents, Mauve lost Elliot and Nancy too. A wild party at a family friend's home to celebrate the purchase of their new cow plant ended with cake for them both. After this, other accidents kept happening to the Lance family line, with broken limbs that led to sepsis and alien abductions with some relatives to never be seen or heard from again. Mauve decided to change her last name in an effort to appease the evil gnomes that had taken over her life. And this worked for a while too. Mauve moved out to the Henford-on-Bagley area where she decided she wanted to set down roots and make an honest go of it on the land. And this is where Ellie comes in. Ellie Davenport was born to Lucas and Marie Davenport and has 3 brothers. The Davenports are well known in the Henford-on-Bagley area for their very successful lumber and orchard business. Davenport Lumber Co. was founded by Ellie's grandfather, Gideon Davenport. Gideon is married to Betty P. Davenport, but Ellie refuses to refer to her as grandmother. Betty P., or Betty Pumlob, went to school with Gideon, but they never ran in the same circles. After the death of Gideon's first wife, Abigail, he turned his work into his life. Lucas is Gideon's only son, but Lucas spent most of his childhood being raised by a nanny. After more than 30 years in the lumber business, Gideon decided to branch off on a new path in the form of orchards and vineyards. This is when he met Betty P. again. She was the manager of a small orchard that Gideon was touring to potentially purchase, and she was his tour guide. Now, I do have to state that the following information is solely speculation, so please do not sue me, Betty P. After a few taste tests of the hard ciders that they offered, the tour began, and it ended with a little woohoo in the photo booth. And the rest, well, that's history, friends. The couple married not long after this, and Betty P. immediately began renovations to the family mansion. Unlike Mauve, Ellie never attended family gatherings as they seldom took place. Funerals and weddings were the only family time the Davenports ever really spent together. Each of these social affairs were treated the same. They were not celebrations per se, but rather a chance for the respective branches of the family tree to outdo the other. Family members showing up to weddings in white who were not the bride was an expected altercation to endure, and don't even get me started on the emotional outbursts at funerals over antique china and family heirlooms. Growing up, Ellie assumed this was just how all families were and never gave it another thought. She attended the Landgrab Institute for the Arts, located in Oasis Springs, and graduated at the top of her class. Ellie is very passionate about baking baking and cake decorating, which is why she begged her parents to allow her to attend LIA. Her dream is to open a small bakery/cake decorating business and provide for herself without having to rely on family money. Ellie's 3 brothers, Samuel, John, and Gregory, all followed in their grandfather and father's footsteps and work for the family business. Each brother focuses on a respective sector of the business, Samuel overseeing the lumberjacks and created the specialty team for the tie hacking. These guys like fell trees for railroad ties and stuff. It was kind of cool when I was looking it up. John is the accountant for the company as a whole and also oversees the paper mill and logging mills. And Gregory is the head of the orchards and vineyards. They're not very involved in each other's lives outside of work and very rarely reach out to Ellie for social purposes. Ellie prefers this though, as her brothers often talk down about her silly career and dreams. Anything outside of trees, wood, or hard manual labor, and the Davenports tune out. After attending Brichester University in pursuit of a business degree, Ellie moved back to Henford-on-Bagley and purchased the old family farm from her grandparents and began renovations. Adding a greenhouse and expanding the garden area, Ellie had began to settle into her new life on this little spit of land. She had begun saving up money to purchase a commercial lot that was advertised in the local paper. Selling the vegetables she was able to grow and sometimes her baked goods at the farmer's market, she made a good dent in the amount she needed for a down payment. Unfortunately, Betty P. caught wind of Ellie's new wealth and decided she wanted to cash in what she could. Betty P. demanded that Ellie start paying property tax to her for the property that Ellie had purchased outright. She did not owe them any money for the land because she was now profiting off of the land. Obviously, Ellie ignored these requests and went on about her life. Then, phone calls from lawyers began, and they were relentless. Ellie eventually cut her own phone line and threw her computer into the river to stop the harassment. One night, after burning the hundreds of letters that had showed up that week, Ellie decided to grab a drink at the Gnome's Arm in an attempt to forget about all of the chaos, even if it was only for a few hours. Ellie was not an openly social person, but was eager this night to get out on the town. She arrived, sat at the bar, and ordered her favorite drink, a silent film. But the bartender got her order mixed up with the woman next to her. Ellie turned to the woman next to her and was silent at first. Sitting next to her was the most beautiful woman Ellie had ever seen. She smiled and gestured at the 2 drinks, and they exchanged to get their correct order and casually chatted for a while. It wasn't until the woman was about to close out her tab and leave for the night that Ellie realized she hadn't asked her name. Ellie tried to slyly ask her name and maybe if she could get a social media handle or, better yet, her number. The woman smiled and laughed a little and simply said, "I'm Maeve. It's a pleasure to meet you," and slipped a napkin into Ellie's hand containing her phone number and signed with a small little heart. After this night, the threats from Betty P. became fewer and farther between, giving Ellie some breathing room. Ellie and Maeve began seeing each other casually at first, but quickly became serious. Ellie attending many Lance family gatherings over the first few months of their relationship. Seeing Maeve with her family made Ellie fall for her even more. Ellie wanted that kind of love when family was around. She felt slightly jealous at times, though she would never articulate any of those feelings to Maeve. Eventually, Maeve moved into Ellie's home and they started planning for their future together. They purchased the commercial lot in town and did a lot of the renovating and fixing up themselves to save money. Even though Betty P's threats had calmed down for a short time, at the grand opening of EM Suite, Ellie was served with a formal lawsuit. Betty P. and Gideon Davenport were listed at the top of the document in big bold letters. Ellie kept this from Maeve at first because she didn't want to worry her with her family's probably can't say that on YouTube. Ellie kept this from Maeve at first because she didn't want to burden her with her family's BS. Maeve ended up finding the court papers while cleaning around the farm one day and immediately called Ellie. They had a very long discussion about the whole situation, and Maeve made a call to her cousin, who was some big shot attorney out in Del Sol Valley. He mainly represented Brittany Cho in her many civil lawsuits because of her relentless jumping and shouting while in public places and disturbing the peace, but he also handled business litigations on the side. He was able to help them and declared he was doing it for free because they are family. While Maeve found this very kind and endearing for him to do, Ellie wasn't so sure. Yes, he never charged them a cent or sent them a bill, but many public interviews and television appearances he made throughout the trial left a sour taste in Ellie's mouth. The lawsuit was eventually dismissed as Betty P. had no standing to request the property taxes be paid to her rather than the local government, and was hit with a fine for wasting the court's time, and was also ordered ordered to pay any and all attorney fees that were incurred by Ellie and Maeve. And again, while Maeve's cousin did not charge her or Ellie for his services, he did keep an excellent record of his hours on the case, down to individual text messages sent to both Maeve and Ellie. He got his money from Betty P, but Gideon was led to believe that Ellie and Maeve were plotting to take the family business over. Betty P even cited Ellie's getting a business degree as a reason to believe there was going to be a coup. Gideon cut all ties with Ellie and branded her as removed from the family. He basically meant that she was dead to all of them. Betty P had finally gotten everything she wanted, and then some. Sure, she had to pay out some attorney fees and was scolded by a judge for her Karen-like behavior, but now she knew that she had complete control over Gideon and his full trust in every word that she said. But we can dive more into that when we do their speed build, don't worry. After being cut off by the family, her brothers included, Ellie and Maeve spent even more time on the farm and eventually started posting SimTube videos on their gardening journey and their respective hobbies. Ellie's parents occasionally sent letters updating her on their lives and hoping to hear back from the goings-on on the farm. Ellie had decided she didn't want to send any responses because she knew Betty P and Gideon would find out, and that was a can of worms that had been closed, and she intended to keep it that way. She did look forward to the letters though, and would set aside a few hours whenever one was received to read it thoroughly and memorize the details before tossing it into a fire pit. Burning family letters became a way for Ellie to cope with it all. The flames and the ash, a physical symbol of the pain she felt inside. Well, that got a little dark there for a second, I'm sorry. Ellie and Maeve got married and adopted 2 children and lived happily ever after together. Ellie remained estranged from her family, but had found a new and more loving family in the Lances. Ellie often reminisces about the hardships in her life, but can now look back and be grateful. If it weren't for Gideon meeting and marrying that witch of a woman, Betty P, I mean, sure, she would have never gotten sued, but then she never would have met Maeve and never would have lived her life the way that she chose to live it for herself. Anyway, we are reaching the end of this beautiful speed build here, and before I take you lovely people who stuck around this long on a finished tour, I just wanted to say thank you. This is my first time doing a speed build this way, and I'm not sure if this is necessarily the way I want to continue to do these, but I really got into the story for these 2 Sims and just wanted to share it with you all. So maybe I'll do a proper playthrough of their story. I don't know. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Maybe a let's play with Mauve and Ellie. I love them. I hope you love them as much as I do now. Who's it? In closing, again, thank you for watching and getting to this point, and I hope you enjoyed the story. So now, without further ado, my lovely viewers, here is a house tour.